Story 1. Johnny One Arm. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a city built on top of itself. A labyrinth of the dark, damp alleys where the sun never touches the ground. This is Edinburgh, 1689. A place of deep shadows and even deeper grudges. John Chiesley was a man consumed by a singular burning rage. He lost a legal battle over his divorce, and he blamed one man, Sir George Lockhart. Now, Lockhart wasn't just any judge. He was the Lord President of the Court of Session, the most powerful legal figure in all of Scotland. To touch him was to touch the crown itself. But Chiesley didn't care. On Easter Sunday, as the bells of St Giles Cathedral rang out across the city, Chiesley didn't pray. He waited. He followed the judge home from the service in broad daylight, walking softly. In the middle of the street, he drew his pistol and he fired a single shot into the judge's back. Justice in the 17th century wasn't just swift, it was poetic. They wanted to break Chiesley before they killed him. They put him in the boots, a horrific iron device designed to crush the bones of the legs. He endured days of agony, yet witnesses said he never screamed. He just stared at the crowd with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Before they took him to the gallows, they decided that the hand that committed the sin should pay the price first. While he was still breathing, they took a butcher's blade and hacked off his right arm, the same arm that had pulled the trigger. They pinned the severed limb to the city gates as a warning. The rest of him, they left it to swing in an iron cage until the crows picked him clean. But then the body disappeared. No one saw the thief, no one found the remains, but soon after the stories started. People walking the dark closes of the Royal Mile reported a tall, gaunt figure stepping out of the mist. A man with a pale, twisted face and a heavy, ragged coat, with the right sleeve pinned empty to his chest. They called him Johnny One Arm. He didn't just haunt the streets, he hunted. There are accounts from the 1800s of people feeling a cold, impossible weight on their shoulder, a phantom grip that felt like bone through cloth. For 3 centuries, he was a ghost story used to keep children indoors until 1965. During a renovation of Dalry House, workers pulled up the ancient floorboards. There, in the black dirt beneath the wood, they found a skeleton. It was old, it was brittle, and when they brushed away the dust, they realised the right arm was missing entirely. They gave the bones a proper burial, but the sightings didn't stop. If you go looking for him today, you'll find his footprints everywhere. Start at the Royal Mile, specifically Old Bank Close. That is where the blood hit the stones. Then walk toward the West Bow. This narrow, winding street was the path to the gallows. Tourists often report the feeling of being followed here, describing a rhythmic, uneven thump drag sound echoing off the stone walls. But his true home is Dalry House. It stands today as a nursery of all things. People still claim to see a shadow leaning against the garden walls, watching the street. It is a silhouette that is distinctly incomplete. If you find yourself in these places tonight, listen to the rhythm of the footsteps behind you. If they sound uneven, if they sound like someone is dragging a heavy weight, I've got one rule for you. Don't look back. Story 2. Captain Green. Step away from the crowded streets for a moment and head towards the water, to the port of Leith. The air here is thick with salt and rot, but if you listen closely over the crashing waves, you might just hear the sound of a rope creaking under a heavy weight. In 1705, the city of Edinburgh was starving and humiliated after a failed colonial venture. They were looking for someone to blame, and they found their target in an English captain named Thomas Green. Green's ship, the Worcester, was blown into the Firth of Forth by a storm. It was bad luck, but for the Scots, it was an opportunity. They accused Green and his crew of piracy, claiming they had boarded and sunk a beloved Scottish ship that had gone missing months prior. There was no proof. There was no wreckage. There were only rumours and a desperate need for a scapegoat. The trial was a sham. The verdict was inevitable. On a cold April day, a mob of thousands gathered on the sands of Leith. They didn't want just justice. They wanted blood. They dragged Captain Green and 2 of his officers to a makeshift gallows built right on the shoreline, timed perfectly with the incoming tide. As the noose was tightened around his neck, Green looked out over the sea, the same sea that had betrayed him, and maintained his innocence until his very last breath. They swung there in the salt spray until the tide rose high enough to wash over their boots. But the real horror began a few weeks later. News soon arrived from across the ocean that the sunken Scottish ship had actually been found. It hadn't been attacked by pirates at all. It was safe in an East Indian port. Captain Green had been executed for a murder that had never happened. Since that day, the sands of Leith have held a heavy silence. Walk the shore at twilight when the fog rolls in off the Forth, turning the world grey and featureless. Locals speak of a figure in a sea-stained captain's coat walking slowly along the high-water mark. He doesn't look at the town. He only looks out at the water, as if waiting for the ship that would have proven his innocence. But it's the sound that stays with you. People report hearing a wet, choking gasp just behind their ear, the sound of a man struggling against a rope that isn't there. Others have seen footprints appearing in the wet sand, leading directly into the freezing waves, only to vanish where the water gets deep. If you find yourself on the Leith shore as the tide comes in, and you see a man standing perfectly still in the surf, his head tilted at an unnatural broken angle, do not call out to him. He isn't looking for help anymore. He's looking for the people who stood on the sand and cheered while he strangled. And in the dark, everyone looks like a member of the mob. Story 3. Burke and Hare. In the shadows of the old town, there is a saying, up the close and down the stair, buttoned bin with Burke and Hare. It sounds like a nursery rhyme, but it was born from a nightmare that gripped Edinburgh in 1828. At the time, the city was the medical capital of the world. Surgeons at university were desperate for bodies to dissect, but the law only allowed them the remains of executed criminals. Demand far outstripped supply, and where there is a demand, there are men willing to create a market. Enter William Burke and William Hare. They weren't grave robbers. Digging in the dirt was too much work. They realised it was much easier to find the living, the lonely, the drunk, and the forgotten, and turn them into the dead. They operated out of a dismal lodging house in Tanner's Close. Their method was clinical, cold, and terrifyingly silent. They would invite the victim in for a drink, wait for them to become incapacitated, and then they would burk them. One man would sit on the victim's chest to pin them down, while the other clamped a hand over their mouths and mouth. There was no blood, no struggle that neighbours could hear, just the slow, muffled thud of a heart stopping in the dark. For 10 months they hunted. They murdered 16 people, including a well-known street entertainer named Daft Jamie and a beautiful young woman named Mary Pedersen. Each body was packed into a tea chest and carted through the streets to the laboratory of Dr. Robert Knox, who paid them in cold, hard gold and asked no questions. But the stones of Edinburgh have long memories. When the law finally broke down their door, Hare turned King's evidence to save his own skin, leaving Burke to face the gallows alone. In a final twisted stroke of justice, the man who sold bodies for dissection was himself dissected. His skin was tanned and turned into leather. Today, you can still see a pocketbook made from his flesh in a local museum. But the story didn't end with the scalpels. Tanner's Close is gone now, buried under modern buildings, but the energy of those 16 souls remains trapped in the narrow gaps between the stones. On Surgeon Square, where the tea chests were delivered in the dead of night, the air is said to be unnaturally heavy. People have reported the feeling of a weight suddenly pressing down on their chest while walking alone, a phantom pressure that makes it impossible to breathe. Others speak of the shadow of the cart, the sound of wooden wheels rattling over cobblestones when the streets are completely empty. If you find yourself in the Grassmarket late at night and you see 2 men standing in the mouth of a dark close, beckoning you to come over for a friendly drink, keep walking, because in this city, some people don't want your money, they want your breath, and once they have it, you'll never see the morning light.